As we said off the top, we've got a very special guest in for the podcast today. You can read his work on the website at espn.com.au/AFL. Jasper Chellappah is his name, and he's our draft guru. Firstly, welcome to the ESPN Footy Podcast for the first time. I've got to say, it's probably not the most glamorous studio you've been in.
Well, yeah, Triple M's quite nice. But, yeah, Maddie, Jake, thank you for the very warm welcome. It's been beautiful to come in today.
It's been wonderful having you on board this season with a lot of content. As I said, you can read it on the website. And one of the things you do for us every month is a monthly power rankings, basically looking
at... A very good read.
Very good read. On the website right now, I believe, depending on when you listen to this. So do check that out. But basically, we look at the sort of the top 20 prospects that's coming up for the draft year. And I think this is one of the first draft seasons for a long time where I've kind of known for 12 months who this number one is going to be, and everyone just keeps talking about one name, and it's Harley Reid.
Yeah, it was the best bottom age draft campaign I've ever seen, and I think a few of the draft gurus around would agree. He's the quintessential kind of goal-kicking midfielder that Dustin Martin, Christian Petrarca mould.
Not bad.
It's a good comparison, and I think it's well deserved after watching him for 12 months last year and then his opening month and a bit this year. He's delivered on all expectations.
So I've watched a lot. Go on.
Yeah, I just have a question about Harley Reid. So I don't think a lot of people quite understand how it all works. So he was playing seconds for the Blues on the weekend, right?
Yeah, he was
playing.
So
how does that happen, and how does he get that gig?
Yeah, so he's been playing for the Pioneers to start the year. He played 3 games for them, averaged 22 touches and a goal, and then played the AFL Academy game 2 weeks ago, was best on there. He's too good for the Talent League competition, the Coast Talent League, and it's going to be interesting to see a couple other guys roll through the VFL as well, but usually they get a taste of VFL action in the second half of the year, these top draft prospects. He's gone straight to the Carlton VFL side and didn't look out of place at all. He won the first midfield clearance of the day. He started in the midfield. He rolled forward and kicked a goal, and he looked pretty good.
Well, there were AFL listed players that he's playing against in that AFL Academy match as well. Tune into that for a little bit of time against the Port Reserves, I think it was. Yep. And you're right, looking out of place, not him. Absolutely not. Like I said off the top, I saw him in the change rooms on Friday night for St Kilda Port Adelaide. And I've just never seen a 17-year-old look so like a well-built 25-year-old. It's just unreal. So clearly, he's probably the most developed, I guess, of this draft crop, you could say.
There are quite a few really ready-made players, which is interesting. And we were talking about it just before. That it's really interesting how quickly these guys are developing and coming into the AFL system ready to play football. But he's definitely the most ready-made, and he would have been a top 3 draft pick last year, towards the end of the year, and so far this year, he's delivered on those expectations because he's taken his game from playing forward, playing a little bit behind the ball, where he looked a bit like Tom Stewart reading the ball and really aggressive in the air, to now being a pure centre-bounce midfielder that can still kick goals and impact the way he was as a forward.
Is he the sort of player that you'd be, if you were a club that was in the race for a bottom 4 spot, you'd be looking at moving picks around to move up to get him?
Yeah, I don't think 3 first-rounders would get the job done this year.
He's generational, they say.
He's a bit head and shoulders above the rest right now, and the closest to him, I'm sure we'll get into him, but Nick Watson and Ashton Moyer, I don't think you could build a footy club around. Harley Reid's probably that focal piece you could.
To your point, though, and it's something I've noticed over the last probably 5 to 7 years, is that players are coming in now, these kids coming in, and they hit the ground running. They're ready to go. They can run. They've got the body for it. They don't look out of place in their first and second year. I mean, we've spoken about Nick Dacos every week on this podcast. He's only played, 35 games, and he's favourite to win the Brownlow medal. So it's like these guys are coming in, and they look as good as any player that's currently in the league. I feel like that's a trend that's only really just started.
And to your point, I think there are others in the draft sphere that come in and aren't as highly touted as a Dacos or a Horn Francis or a Harley Reid, like a Max Michelini, who's come in and is one of the best lockdown small defenders in the competition already. He was, around a pick 16, pick 20. Lockie Cowan has played every game bar last week for the Blues. He was pick 26 odd. It's through the draft, there are these ready-made players now ready to go because of their fitness levels, because of their strength and endurance. And
the AFL pathways are set up these days to be quite involved quite early in players' careers. So I think it's not a surprise to see that, when the AFL sort of like pathway types identify you at, maybe 12, 13, as early as maybe even earlier. By the time you have had sort of 4 years under the tutelage of some of these guys and some of these pathway programs, you are ready-made and ready to go. Another player I saw in the rooms that was with Harley Reid was Zane Duursma. He seems to feature quite highly on a lot of these draft boards as well. Where does he sort of rank for you at the moment?
Yeah, the idea of Zane Dersma is really exciting. He's brother of Xavier, obviously, and he's this forward half midfielder. I think there's a trend throughout this draft where these forward half midfielders that can hit the scoreboard but are really clean below their knees and can rack up 25, 30 touches is quite prevalent, and he's another one of them that can change a game and kicks really unique goals. He snaps them over his shoulder almost. It's pretty impressive to watch him to play for Eastern Rangers and the Gippsland Power, and he'll be suiting up for Vic Country, who has a very solid squad this year as well.
You mentioned a couple of names before. Nick Watson, affectionately known as the Wizard. What sort of why does he have that nickname attached to him?
He's one of the best goal kickers I've seen, probably since Isaac Rankin coming through the draft. He kicks them out of absolutely nowhere. He reads packs and he crumbs like a traditional small forward. But this year, he's gone through the midfield. He's averaging 26 touches, and he's looked really composed and fast in there. He's brought a different element to that midfield mix, and I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. He might go pick 2, and probably before Harley Reid announced himself last year, he was in the pick 1 conversation. But Matty, he's only 170 centimetres. It's
170?
Yes, he's 170 flat.
Your
He's
height,
one of the shortest. He's one of the shortest players in the draft, and it's a testament to how good he is, because he's probably the pound for pound best player in the draft. But
wow,
maybe clubs.
How many players have we seen that have come through AFL ranks that have been under 100?
Caleb Daniel.
Yeah, well, or Brent Daniels, maybe. Yeah. There's a few that are there, but the fact that they are quite that Watson is touted to go quite high would be, I think, quite unusual for someone who's quite so diminutive.
It's really unique, but he plays a game that he tackles hard. He's really aggressive in the contest, and the ability to, being that short almost helps him in a lot of situations because he ducks under a lot of tackles. He can draw a lot of high frees, and I know that's not something we love, but it is a really good hallmark of a small forward to be able to get to Cody Waitman and get those kinds of free kicks in the forward 50, and he makes the most of them.
Absolutely.
Is there a player that perhaps might not be sort of top 5, top 10 on all the draft boards at the moment that you've sort of seen and really liked what you've seen in the early part of the season and think that they will start to jump as the season goes on?
If you want an early prediction, I think this kid is as likely as anyone in the AFL to captain the inaugural Tasmanian footy side.
This is a massive call.
Colby McKercher. Now, he's a Tasmanian. He's a midfielder.
Sounds like a Tasmanian name.
Does it?
I'm not getting
I won't get into that one.
Hello to everyone in
I'm not
Tasmania
coming along for that one, Matty. But yeah, he's a midfielder, really fast, quick on his feet, and it just uses the ball superbly through the middle of the ground. He's one touch, and he went head-to-head with the Pioneers and Harley Reid 3 or 4 weeks ago in the Talent League for the Tassie Devils, and he did not look out of place at all. He had 31 touches, the most on the ground. He kicked a goal, and he made Harley Reid look a little bit slow sometimes with his dash out of packs because he's got this real burst in his first 2 or 3 steps.
Interesting. Well, see, he would be let's say 24, 25 if and when a Tasmanian team comes in. That's one to watch. Don't mind that at all. Yeah, you mentioned another name off the top, Ashton Moir.
Ashton Moir, yes. Yeah. He's the best kick-off left and right foot I've ever seen come through the talent pathways. He is absolutely mercurial in the forward half, and he's one of the funnest ones to watch because he's 186-ish centimetres, so he has this really springy leap, and he can play as a kind of a third tall, but when the ball hits the ground, he just goes to work, and left foot, right foot, he runs in on set shots and decides which one to kick it off.
I was going to say, there's not that many players in the league right now that are great on both feet. Like, probably the one that sticks out still side bottom has always been really good on both feet. But to be a sort of what you said, potentially a third key forward, third tall, like a big man being able to do that, that seems quite unusual.
It is. It's really interesting to watch him do it. And to your point, I think a lot of coaches these days probably agree that you don't have to be, a steel side bottom on both feet, but you just have to be able to get out of trouble with those ones if you're on your left side and you're hemmed in. But he just chooses which one to do. It does not matter to him.
Familiar name on the list that I've been sort of having a look at is Caddy. We've heard that name before. Yes. Now, Nate Caddy is related to former, let's go through them, Cat, Tiger and son Josh, is he not?
Yes. Yeah, he is. He's the nephew of... and he's kind of got the same physique. He's a really barrel-chested young man, but he plays more of a traditional key forward role, and he's a really interesting one for me. I probably have him a bit higher on my boards than a few others because I love his competitiveness in the contest, not just in the air, aerially. He's good up there, but when the ball hits the ground, he applies pressure, and that's kind of what you need in today's game. If your key forwards are applying pressure at ground level, and we've seen a little bit with Sam Draper in the forward half for Essendon, he's been able to kind of apply pressure when the ball hits the ground as well as being a key forward target. Then you're going to help your side, so much as defending with 18 players on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there you go. There's another one to watch out for. I might be throwing you under the bus with this question, but any father-son prospects that we should be keeping an eye out for this year or not?
None in the top 20 to 30. It's going to be.
It's funny how they come in waves, the father-sons.
Do they?
Well, next year we'll see. Levi Ashcroft will challenge for the number 1 pick.
Yeah, and there are early whispers that he might even be better than Will.
Yes.
Here we go. Here we go.
This is what I'm reading on the grapevine.
He had 33 touches and kicked 2 goals 2 weeks ago for the Sandy Dragons, and he's the bottom major.
Yeah,
I'll leave that with you.
That says a lot. We do have a mid-season draft coming up as well. So there's been one of the best players on the weekend for the Hawks, John Newcomb, came out of that a couple of years ago. So you are able to find sort of these hidden gems in these kind of situations.
100%.
Players who might be looked over a bit early, then develop a bit more in their body or develop their skills a bit more. Is there anything we should be keeping an eye out for in the next couple of months as that approaches?
Yeah, well, it's within this month now in May, Maddie.
Really?
Wednesday,
We're in May already.
We have
May 31st.
May. Keep up.
Yeah.
So, for about 4 weeks away. There's not as many standouts in the Talent League this year. I think you can kind of pin that down on a couple reasons. But for one, I think coming out of COVID, these players don't get left in the cracks anymore. There's possibly a bit more exposure after that period, and
that's a good point.
You're not going to get a Jai Newcomb or a Jai Cully coming out of this draft. I think Cully's going to be really good as well. But I think there's going to be more of a target on mature prospects. The one that's the most notable is going to be Sam Naismith, who obviously did 4 or 5 ACLs. Very mature. Did 4 or 5 ACLs with Sydney. They let him go, and he's been playing really well for Port Melbourne in the VFL.
Interesting. It's funny how, you're right. I think the COVID thing makes a lot of sense, but then, the equilibrium is going to swing back to, mature key position players, mature bodies, mature ruckmen.
And there will be, even if you say the talent may not be there as we've seen in previous seasons, there's still going to be 2 or 3 or 4 that come in and have some sort of an impact and are playing. That's just the reality that we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you want to leave us with before we let you go?
Maybe the best name that could be picked up in the mid-season draft, an overager, Ziggy Toledo Glassman. Now, he's
strong names in this podcast.
He missed last year just. He was pretty close, but he's kind of an undersized key forward, but he's kicking a bag of goals. On the weekend, he kicked 6. 2 weeks ago, he kicked 6.
Jeez.
And he looks very good for the Dandenong Stingrays, so keep an eye on him. He might be picked up in the mid-season draft.
There's another name floating around in my head that's quite a mouthful. Colton Tholstrup.
Yes, he's a bit of a cult hero already. He plays for Subiaco over in the West. He's got the speed dealers. He's got the long curly mullet. He's a very interesting character when you meet him as well. So,
can you be a cult hero if you don't have sort of long flowing hair? I feel like they go hand in hand, right?
It helps.
It does help. It does help you stand out, I guess. Or you could have the Chad Warner, the 2-minute noodles on top of the head.
Yeah,
your mate. Anyway. Jasper, it's been wonderful to have you on the podcast, mate. We appreciate what you're doing for the website. As we said earlier, you can read all of his stuff, espn.com.au/AFL. We'll get you on the podcast again. This has been fun. So
let's make it happen.
Yeah, we'll do that a bit later in the year, maybe as after the mid-season draft, and then obviously with the draft stuff and player movement in October and November. Thanks for joining us.
Perfect. Cheers, boys.